We have a timer still up here, and she will let the candidates know how much time they have. When it's 30 seconds before the end, she will hold up a red stop sign. So hold it up and let them see what it looks like. And as the candidates know, I'm very strict with time. Statement, your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Bea. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here today, and I'm also pleased there's only 14 days left on the campaign. We're headed towards it. Yes, indeed. We're headed towards the finish line. Over the last year or so, I've had the opportunity to meet thousands of people in the 47th district, whether it be over the phone or at the door at community events like this. You know, like me, most people are very concerned with the direction of our country, and I think about it from a personal level. My wife Donna and I, as many of you know, we have 3 daughters. They range from college to 1st grade. And I think about the oldest one, who's going to graduate from college within the next year, and I think about what are her economic opportunities. And I recall very vividly what mine were when I graduated from college. And I worked hard, but the opportunities were there. I worked for AT&T, I had a job before I left college, so I had a place to go immediately upon graduation. I started at the bottom, not the middle or the top, but at the bottom. And over the next decade, I had an opportunity to improve my economic circumstances. So I was in corporate America for 10 years. And then I was a local small businessman for the next 25, which is what I am today. And I think about my oldest, Betsy. Will she have that same economic opportunity? And I will tell you, if things don't change, she won't. First of all, how long will it be for her to find a job that's commensurate with her skills and her ability and her education? And she's a hard worker. She works hard. She's made the right decisions in life. She's made sacrifices. Will she have a job when she graduates from college? More than likely not. Now, she's a good kid, so she'll land somewhere. I don't know if it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, but she'll land somewhere, but it's going to take a while. And then I think about what will her first decade look like? Will she have the same opportunities that I had? Doesn't appear to be. What businesses are growing, expanding, opening new offices? It's not happening today. Our economic recovery is anemic. We need to send people to represent us in a legislature that understand the private sector, that understand what it takes to grow an economy, that have personal, practical experience on how to get this done. And I'm that kind of legislator, and that's what I will do for you. I mentioned we have 3 daughters from college to 1st grade, and I'm equally concerned with the 1st grader. Not so much about the economic opportunities, but about what kind of education she's going to get. We're very fortunate here in Long Beach. The Long Beach Unified School System is an outstanding school system. But with the devastating budget cuts, which we'll probably talk more about later, I wonder how long will that quality of education continue? Will she be able to go all the way through public education here in Long Beach? And I know many parents who are in the same position I am are equally as concerned. So we need to turn things around in both the state and the country, and I look forward to your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowenthal.
Well, thank you, Bea. Welcome, everyone, also. I'm honored to be here, pleased to be here, pleased to represent you in the State Senate, and honored to run for the Congress of the United States in a new congressional district. A little bit about myself, you know that I was a community activist, longtime professor at Cal State Long Beach, worked in the community, worked with many of you on nonprofit issues, ran for city council, walked my district, learned about some of the environmental impacts of diesel particulates, pollution that was over 20 years ago, the impacts upon asthma, the impacts upon pulmonary lung disease, and I've really committed 20 years to improve the air quality in this district, introduced a series of legislation, and became known as the state and national leader in environmental protection. Along the way, I also worked very, very hard for job creation, to make sure that we had sustainable jobs, clean jobs, and that we had the infrastructure to support those jobs. So I worked real hard to make sure that we brought the money, that public-private partnership, to create the Long Beach Courthouse, which is a state courthouse here in Long Beach, to create the new Gerald Desmond Bridge, which I brought together the vast amount of state funds to do that. But I also worked very hard on education. I chaired education. I worked on the Student Success Task Force, which I wrote to ensure that students that go through our community colleges succeed and that our systems work and that they make sure that our emphasis is on student success. I've worked very, very hard also in government reform, governance reform. I was the person who worked with the League of Women Voters and others who introduced the legislation to create the Independent Redistricting Commission, and now I'm fortunate to be able to be one of the recipients of independently drawing districts. I'm running because this is the most critical election of our times. Most critical. I'm running to protect Social Security. I'm running to protect Medicare. I'm running to make sure that the Affordable Care Act, that we have health insurance for all in this country. I'm also running to make sure that we reduce the deficit by a balanced approach, that those who need to pay the most, who earn the most, pay their fair share, that we reduce the deficit over time, such as President Obama has introduced, that we do it by both cuts, but also that we take away the tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, and we go back to the Bill Clinton era, where we had the greatest prosperity in this nation. I hope that you will support me. I have fought for this district. I have tried to represent you with integrity.
Mr. Lowenthal, while you're standing,
You sat down?
Can
I go second?
The newly drawn 47th Congressional District crosses 2 counties and spans cities from Long Beach to Rossmore to Buena Park.
Yes.
How do you plan to meet the needs of this very diverse situation?
Well, you're right. 59% of the district is on the Los Angeles side, Long Beach, Signal Hill, and the southern part of Lakewood. 41% of the district, I believe, is in Orange County, going from the many cities that you mentioned, also Stanton, Cypress. I think it's important to break down historically there has been a barrier between Los Angeles and Orange County. That needs to end. We are finding that Orange County is not the Orange County that people remember. It is a diverse county now. It is ethnically diverse, has the largest Vietnamese American population, large Latino population, large Asian Pacific population, Filipino, Chinese population. I have a reputation of listening to people, having support from various, of bringing people together. It is a great time to link these two communities. In terms of economic development, both of these communities are totally dependent, or largely dependent, upon the movement of goods in and out of this community. I'm proud to say I have a large amount of support in the goods movement industry, because even though I pushed them real hard to change, they have now come around to support some of the things that we have done here. We have now the cleanest, greenest ports. I think that this economic idea, linking these two communities together, understanding the diversity, will help us greatly to really break down this separation between Orange County and Los Angeles.
Mr. DeLong, the same question. The questions answers will be 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, you simply need to invest time. I mean, either Alan or I were well known in the Orange County area. Neither one of us have represented it. It's 42% of the district. It's Rossmore, Los Alavitas, Cypress, portions of Westminster, Stanton, Garden Grove, Buena Park, and a little piece of Anaheim. And I've made those efforts, attending their events, communicating and connecting with community leaders. In fact, virtually every single elected official in Orange County has endorsed my campaign. All 5 Orange County supervisors, all 5 elected officials in the city of Westminster, all 5 elected officials in the city of Stanton, school board members, state senators, state assembly members. Every chamber of Congress has taken a position to support my campaign. Why? Because I'm in Orange County on a consistent basis. I'm attending their events, I'm attending their meetings, I'm communicating with them about issues that are important to them, and they believe me when I tell them I'm a very accessible legislator. That's been my experience, that's my reputation in Long Beach, and I've assured them that I will be the same as them. I will spend a significant time of Orange County, I don't view Orange County as being linked to a Long Beach congressional seat. I think this is an Orange County seat as well, and you need to work very hard to make sure you're representing everybody, whether it be geographically or whether it be ethnicity. I have tremendous support from the Vietnamese population, particularly in the Garden Grove and the Westminster area. I spent an enormous amount of time getting to meet those folks, understand their culture, learn a little bit of their language, and understand what's important to them. So I think that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you're up. What are the environmental challenges that face our district, and how can the federal government address them?
Sure. Well, a number of things. First of all, as Alan mentioned, the Port of Long Beach, back when he was a council member, generated a tremendous amount of port-related pollution. And we've turned the corner on that. Right? In the last 6 years, while I've been on the city council, we've seen the greatest decline in port-related emissions in history. Now, large part of that is certainly due to Mayor Bob Foster, who's been a leader in the environmental regulations, the clean truck program. State legislature and Alan have also played a role, and the community has played a significant role. I think what we need to do, and what we can do at a federal, state, and local level, is develop appropriate regulations. You don't want to over-regulate the industry that has negative economic impacts, but you want an appropriate amount of regulations. And one of those things you want to do is you do want to create a more sustainable environment for the folks that live there. And I would continue to keep that record. I certainly have in Long Beach. When I took office 6 years ago, Alameda's Bay regularly received D's and F's in water quality. Now we get A's and B's the vast majority of the time. Colorado Lagoon has had a terrible water quality for decades. We've turned that around in a variety of partnerships to improve the water quality in the lagoon for the first time in 50 years. So there's a number of things that we've been doing in Long Beach, and I would take my strong record of environmental, and I would take it to Washington as well. Thank you.
Mr. Lowenthal, the same question.
And the question, if you repeat the question,
Yes.
has to do environmental.
What are the environmental challenges that face our district, and how can the federal government address them?
Well, first, I'd like to preface this my answer to say that I think I am recognized both statewide and nationwide as the environmental leader that has really led to many of the changes in the air quality in this district. I will continue to work on both air quality and water quality, but really the issue is leadership, not just being around while things have changed. Leadership. Leadership means a real commitment and a persistence to continuing to work. And I will take that to Washington. When I first started to work on air quality issues, which I think are critical to this district, and as I agree with Gary, also water quality issues are critical to this district. Those are the two critical: environmental and global warming, which I have a clearly defined record of saying all the time that global warming is the most difficult, and not the most difficult, the most important challenge before us. That I will continue this fight. When I first started here in Long Beach many years ago, they said you can't do anything at the local level. It's a state and federal issue. When I got to the state, they said you can't do everything here. It's a federal issue. Well, we have worked real hard at the local issue, the state issue, and now we are working. We need a legislator who has a solid record of accomplishment to work at the federal level. As far as water quality, I have led the fight to improve the water quality. And talking about Colorado Lagoon, when there was going to be the terminal drain project there, was the one that brought the planning grant for Long Beach. I brought $3.5 million for separation of storm drain separation. I have worked really hard over the years on all these issues. I will continue to work hard. I run on my record.
Thank you.
Oh, I think I should stand.
You might as well stand. In 2009, the nonprofit sector employed 13.5 million individuals, or approximately 10% of the country's workforce.
Yes.
More people work in this sector than the finance industry, including insurance and real estate combined. What would you do to support jobs in this vital sector of our economy?
Well, I think that right before, let's look at what we have before us and really what are the options. President Obama has put forth a budget that calls for both cuts in all segments, and that also calls for additional revenues. Mr. Ryan and the Republican Party have put forth a budget that just calls for cuts, that do deficit, that do damage to the nonprofit sector. They, as Mr. Romney said, he'd get rid of Big Bird, he'd get rid of funding for. That is the wrong thing to do. There are a number of things that we must do. President Obama has, one of the things that funds nonprofits is and why we've had less is that we must maintain and actually increase the amount of estate taxes, not reduce those. Estate taxes have allowed people to give money to nonprofits. That's exactly what has happened. President Obama has said, let's return to the 2009 level, which is when we had the highest amount, and keep the same level of estate taxes that we had there, and not do the cuts that the Republicans want, which will devastate nonprofits. Also, and that level was $3.5 million per person as an exemption, and to set the level at 45%. Lower than, and right now the Republicans have a lower level. That is not going to help nonprofits. The other thing is that at the end of this year after the election, we need to deal with the ability for people to maintain rollovers and to give 100. If you have a tax sheltered annuity or tax shelter that you can give up to $100,000 a year to a nonprofit. That is going away unless we all stand up and fight for that.
Mr. DeLong, the same question.
Thank you. Well, you're going to see some clear differences between Alan and I in this question. Okay, first of all, the cost of the federal government has doubled in the last 10 years. It's increased 100%. Think about that. In your personal life, your business life, you doubled your expenses and you didn't have any meaningful revenue growth. That's crazy. And I know they do that in Sacramento, and clearly they do that in Washington. That's a crazy way to run an organization. We need cuts. Now, first of all, let's be clear about that. In the last decade, who's been in charge? Well, it's 6 years under Republicans and it's 4 years under Democrats. So regardless of your political party, you can't blame the other party. In fact, this might be the one thing that the parties did collaborate on, was increasing the national deficit and the national debt. We do need to cut expenses at the federal level. Now, can we cut 40% of the federal budget, which is what their deficit spending today? Absolutely not. There would be dramatic unintended consequences if we did that. We need to grow revenue. And my opponent wants to take ownership of President Obama's agenda to raise taxes. I will tell you, I think that's the absolutely wrong thing to do when you're having a difficult economic recovery. But we do need more revenue. The difference is, I think more revenue should come from economic growth. We get our economy going again, economic growth, there's going to be more tax revenue for government, and there's going to be more revenue and more income for people that are charitably disposed to give. That's going to fuel the nonprofit sector. As long as we have an anemic economic recovery, it's going to be very difficult to create jobs. We get the economy growing again, jobs will come back to the nonprofit sector as well as the remaining sectors of our economy. Thank you.
Well, while you're standing.
Yes.
What are the priorities related to tax reform? And in particular, please address the issues that affect nonprofits, such as the proposed capping of charitable deductions, the IRA charitable rollover, and the non-itemizing of tax deductions, etc.
Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, when it comes to nonprofits, and the question is, do we want people to invest more in nonprofit organizations? If the answer is yes, and I firmly believe it's yes, then we want to incent them from a tax perspective to do so. You put caps, you start closing other opportunities, people are going to give less. That is the way it works. There is a linkage. So I would be strongly supportive of giving tax incentives to people to make contributions into the nonprofit sector. I think it's the right thing to do for a number of reasons. One is that nonprofits tend to manage their dollars very wisely. You look at a nonprofit and see how much of it is G&A, how much is overhead, how much is spent on drills. Very little, particularly here in Long Beach. Our nonprofits are run very well. Now you look at a state or federal government. Would you make the same claim to a program that the government was running? Absolutely not. There's a tremendous amount of overhead, and not enough dollars end up where we want it to go. So I believe we are much better off to see dollars go directly to the nonprofit sector and not go through a federal or state bureaucracy.
Mr. Lowenthal?
Well, I think there's a clear difference. I agree with the council member. I do not support doubling down on the trickle-down theory. That's really what is being proposed, is the trickle-down theory, cut taxes, let revenues come back, and that will help everything. That has been a failure every time it's been done, because there's a sponge at the top that never lets the money get down to the people. I have already said that I strongly support maintaining estate taxes. At a level which provides an incentive for people to give money to nonprofits, because if not, that money will go back to the government. That is the best form, it's an incentive form. I also very, very strongly support as the question was asked, the IRA rollover. We have to be able to make sure that people are able to take money out of their tax shelter and not have tax consequences. That's what I'm talking about. Not have the tax, if you take out up to $100,000 and give it to a nonprofit, that out of your retirement, you should not be taxed on that money. Critically important for giving money to making sure. And I also believe that the vitality of this country is based upon a balanced approach, where we make a commitment to our social services, we make a commitment to providing the resources necessary, and we do that by having a balanced tax. And I've already said, where does that balanced tax come from? It does not come from the $5 trillion of continuing the Bush tax cuts on the richest and also reducing the tax rate on the richest. That will do immeasurable harm to the country, to the middle class, and to the nonprofit sector.
Mr. Lowenthal, having a trained workforce is critical to our country's
Yes.
future. What specific measures would you support to return our country to having the best and brightest, as well as also providing job training, opportunities for youth, our school, and others in the underserved population?
I agree with that. As a person who's run job training programs, when I was at Cal State Long Beach, Long Beach City College, Long Beach Unified School District, the Workforce Development Board all came together, and I participated as one part of that at an office over at Long Beach City College to make sure that displaced and unemployed workers got the training at the community college and got the job training benefits. We need to have workforce development. That's why I put forth the Student Success Act. Much of what we're talking about in terms of job training will be done at the community colleges. Today, in California, we have the largest single sector in the nation in terms of a community college system. We have almost 3 million people that are in the system. If you look at the students who entered the system after 6 years, only about a third of them graduate. That means that we lose 2 million of these 3 million. That's people who are in career technical education, because they can't get the courses. That's people who are moving on to 4-year schools or getting a degree there and to be able to move into the workforce. We need to have the courses there, to prioritize those students, make sure that we don't lose those students, and that's what I have worked on. That's the legislation. So I think both through education and also making sure that government invests in the American Jobs Act, which provides resources for jobs, for teachers, for police officers, for investment in infrastructure to build bridges, that will create the jobs. And if we have an educated workforce, they will do the jobs. That's what I say.
Thank you. Mr. DeLong, the same question.
Thank you. Part of that question is, what measures would I support to improve education? Well, first I would start by doing the exact opposite of what Alan has done. Alan is decimating our education system here in the state legislature. Over $2 billion of cuts to the California university system. No, I'm sorry, over $1 billion of cuts to the California university system in the last 2 years. Similar cuts to the UC system. Over 20% of community colleges. Devastating cuts to K-12 education. Now, when I talk to King Alexander and other educational leaders here in the city of Long Beach, what I don't hear from them is I don't hear from them if they need more legislation at a local, state, or federal level. What I hear from them is they appropriately fund our educational institutions here in the state of California, and we will turn out well-educated, well-qualified students. That's not happening today. We're not funding our education system. We're back in 1965 level at higher education as a percentage of the economy. That is not the direction we want to go in. It may seem like we get to save money in the short term, but the long-term cost to our society will be tremendous if we don't turn that around and turn it around very quickly. I'm also a strong supporter of workforce training. We do quite a bit of it here in the city of Long Beach. We take advantage of state and federal grants. We put them to good use. We have an excellent workforce training program. I've been a strong supporter of that and will continue to be. Additionally, at a federal level, I think there is a role for federal government to play in education. I think we want to make sure that everybody in our society has access to education, and one of the things the federal government provides is Pew Grants. So if you don't have the economic resources, you're not denied an opportunity for education. So I would do these things and many more.
Thank you. While you're up, as the last aerospace manufacturer in California and the provider of over 5,000 jobs that support families, the C-17 program is in jeopardy. What is your position on support for this program?
Sure, I've spent well, first of all, I'm the chair of the city's federal legislative committee. So I travel to Washington once or twice a year, sometimes with the mayor, sometimes with my committee, our government relations manager, and one of the top priorities on our federal agenda every year is supporting the C-17 program. So I've made countless trips of meeting with our members of Congress, the federal resource agencies, the military, the Boeing, and the city of Long Beach myself is a very strong supporter of the C-17 program. But unfortunately, we are in a very highly taxed state here in California. It is very difficult to run any kind of a manufacturing operation here. So if Boeing has a choice of whether to build the next plane in California or Washington or another state, California is going to be on the bottom of the list. So although we do need to do things at a federal level and advocate on our behalf, we will certainly do that. Candidly, we need to see some change here in the state of California before we're going to see a growth in that industry.
Mr. Lowenthal.
Well, we both agree on that. I have consistently taken a position since I've been on the city council, the state legislature, written letters to support the C-17 program. I support the C-17 program. But I also believe that, as you know, that we need to have to support growth in the both in manufacturing, is that we have to have a well-trained workforce. We have to have an educational system that works. I support, no matter what you hear in the rhetoric about California has cut educational budgets, let's be real clear. We are faced with a great choice. If you want to have an educational system that works today, you will support Prop 30 or Prop 38. I support the initial Prop 30 because I think that targets education and provides the money for education. I support Prop 13. My opponent is not in favor of Proposition 30. He's against it. So while he talks about cutting that we have cut, he will not support any resources for education. He will not support resources. Either will the Republicans in the state legislature. That's why the governor had to go to the people. So if we want to protect both manufacturing, we want to create an environment, a job-ready environment, we have to support education, and we have to support the businesses that are here.
Mr. Lowenthal, Long Beach has one of the nation's largest percentage of a gay and lesbian population.
Yes.
Including the largest percentage of gay and lesbian couples. How will you reach out to those people and the nonprofit groups that serve them?
I have reached out for 30 years. When I was a community activist, I was invited and I worked with and supported the gay and lesbian community in Long Beach. My first endorsements 20 years ago were from Lambda Democratic Club and the gay and lesbian, other aspects of the gay, other organizations in the gay and lesbian community. I have in this election, all the national gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender organizations support my candidacy. I have a record of reaching out. I am the person that has tried to bring people together. I introduced a series of pieces of legislation when I was on the city council to bring people together, to support the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. I have a 100% voting record in the state legislature supporting equal rights for gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual people. I will continue that record. If there's one thing that I am known for in this, is reaching out already to the gay and lesbian community. I have tremendous broad-based support from that community. I will continue to do that.
Mr. DeLong?
Thank you. You say, how would I reach out? I guess the answer to that is simple. I already do. And in fact, I'm very proud to have the endorsements of gay and lesbian elected officials that have chosen my candidacy over Alan. So I already have that history and that reputation. That's an easy one. But I will tell you, since I have a little time remaining, I would appreciate that being misquoted by my opponent who says I'm opposed to Prop 30. I haven't taken a position on Prop 30. Now I have concern about it, I will tell you, because it's not guaranteed to go to education. And the only reason I'm going to vote for it is because I don't want to just give more revenue to Blackwell and Sacramento because of poor decision making with our taxpayer dollars. 1 year education is going to get it, and then they don't get it anymore. As opposed to Prop 38 guarantees money going to education. Now, as you can imagine, I've been a little busy with this campaign, so I have not done all my research on all the propositions, and I will certainly do so before I go to the polls on November 6th. But I do have reservations about Prop 30, that is true. But I have not taken the position that I'm going to oppose it, nor have I taken a position yet that I'm going to support Prop 38, even though that's kind of where I'm leaning in both bills. So let's not create any myths. That is my position.
Mr. DeLong? What will you do to prevent more unnecessary foreclosures and keep more families from losing their homes? How do you plan to protect householders from predatory lending and the discrimination in the U.S. mortgage market?
Thank you. And that is a very serious problem that's happening in our society today. I know where I worked on a couple of constituent issues in the last year where people called. I'll give you one example comes to mind. A single woman recently divorced, has a couple of kids. Mom's living with her. Price of the house has diminished significantly. She lost her down payment, has a fairly expensive loan, can no longer afford to make the mortgage payment. So the bank solution is that they were going to sell the house from out from under, and they're going to give the next buyer a competitive loan. And their reaction is, well, wait a second. If you would give me that loan at that interest rate, at that dollar amount, I would have no problems making the mortgage payment. So why are you going to eject me from this house, evict me out, and give somebody else this opportunity? So I advocate on her behalf. I do have a financial background. Chatted with the bank, went up to the senior management. One of the things that I learned was due to federal regulations, they said, look, it's not that we couldn't do it this one time, but if we do that deal with this person, even though it's in all of our best interests, it's in her personal best interest, clearly, it's in society's best interest, and frankly, it's in the bank's best interest not to go through the changeover. The difference is that remains a bad loan. That's a workout loan on our books, and we get punished by the federal regulators. If we foreclose and evict her, we just clear the loan, and now we have a good loan on our books. So we could do it one time, we could do it 10 times. But you do it 1,000 times, and all of a sudden you have a problem with federal regulators. That is a crazy system. That doesn't work for any of us. Similar situation, a gentleman about 62 years old. He had a bad loan, made some bad choices, so he has a very high interest rate. He says, look, I could probably pay my mortgage for another 4 or 5 years, but I'm going to run out of money. So do I just walk away from my house now, or do I spend all my retirement and then walk away? But again, if he could have that loan written to a competitive market rate, he'd have no problem staying in the house and affording it. Same problem. So what I would do is I would work at the federal level for common sense, pragmatic regulations that serve society well.
Mr. Lowenthal?
Yeah, I think in many ways we agree, but let's understand how we got here, and let's talk about what are potential solutions. We got here because of the deregulation of the financial institutions, the banks, that allowed them to create subprime mortgages that allowed people to get into homes without having appropriate equity or income, and that led to a financial meltdown of the mortgages, while those banks sold all those mortgages and bundled them because they were allowed to do that. And so they took no liability, and yet all people lost their homes. 88% of the losses of the mortgage foreclosures that occurred in this country, 88% occurred in 4 states: California, Florida, Arizona, and Nevada. Those are because those were the great growth states that occurred. We can't allow that deregulation, and that's why I strongly support Dodd-Frank, and I think that we need to make sure that we can control it. In the state legislature, I took a very strong role in supporting mortgage, the changes to our mortgage laws and what banks could do. Right now, and I think we need to do more of this in Washington, right now, or up until just recently, a bank could be engaging in foreclosure in one hand and also ask you to come in to modify your loan. So you're going in there, you're requesting a modification, they say, yes, I'll modify your loan. At the same time, therefore, another part of that bank is foreclosing. We stop that in California. That cannot happen. If you engage in any kind of discussions to modify your loan, that bank cannot engage in foreclosure activities. That has drastically decreased the number of foreclosures that are going on.
Thank you. Mr. Lowenthal, as cities face ongoing, each time you're up, you're
I
staying
know.
a minute. As cities face ongoing budget deficits, public safety budgets are not immune to cuts.
Yes.
What support do you see the federal government providing to ensure that our communities are safe?
Our communities are getting less safe because we are cutting, and cities, these have been difficult times. Just as my opponent has said that the state has had to balance their budgets, because we have to balance our budgets, and we've reduced all the things that we do. The largest part of the state budget is in education, and he rightfully says, see how you were going through this, and this drastic downturn in the economy, education got cut. That is true, as everything else. The same thing happened at cities. As cities try to deal with their budgets, their largest amount of their budget had to do with public safety. They had to cut public safety, putting us all at risk. That's what happens when there are not the sufficient resources either at the local level or at the state level. What I support is the American Jobs Act. I think there are immediate kinds of ways in which we can protect public safety, and that there are long-term ways. The immediate way is to make sure that we pass the American Jobs Act, which will be an infusion of jobs to local governments, to pay for more police officers, to pay for more teachers, to pay for more infrastructure development, which will create more jobs. In the long run, we have to get our financial house in order, and that will protect both education and public safety. We get it in order by having a plan that both has a reasonable amount of cuts and a reasonable amount of new resources, new additional resources. And that is done by eliminating the Bush tax cuts to the wealthy and not reducing the highest tax rate. That will be the amount of money that we need to protect our cities and to protect education.
Mr. DeLong?
Well, it is about balance, and Alan's talked about state versus local, but here's the difference. They've cut the education budget 30%, we've cut public safety maybe 5%. We've tried to spread it around in a balanced way. We haven't gone out and said, okay, we're going to hack the police department by 30%. Absolutely not. We wouldn't do that. But we have taken a very balanced approach, and everybody has had to come on the table and see what they can do to be more effective, more efficient. We are having some upticks in crime this year. That's also compared to a 40-year crime low last year. But we can do better, and we will continue to do better. Now, what's the federal government's role? Well, this money comes from somewhere. We're already deficit spending over $1 trillion a year. $16 trillion in national debt. We're 50,000 a person. I guess I would ask you, how much debt are you willing to give your kids and grandkids? How much is enough? You want to make it $20 trillion, $25 trillion? I mean, how much is enough? An American Jobs Act, although there are good things, there are good parts of it, but I am opposed to continued enormous deficit spending. That will not serve our country well. I live in an environment where, we spend what we have. I don't spend beyond that, not in my personal life, not in my business life, not as your city council representative. We learn to live with our means. Government needs to do the same thing. It's an ethical issue. It's not just economic. It is it ethical to pass this enormous debt burden onto your kids and grandkids? I don't believe it is. And let me also tell you what the number one problem for public safety was pensions. He voted to increase pensions by 50% in the state legislature, and cities and counties blindly follow suit. That's what caused our financial problems here in the city of Long Beach and other cities. The fastest growing expense in our budget is pensions and labor costs. That's what's increasing. It's not a significant decline in revenue. We haven't had 30% decline. We've had our labor costs have increased dramatically, and that's why I voted against our labor agreements. Not because I didn't think that people worked hard and were worthy. We have an outstanding public safety and employee workforce in the city of Long Beach. We just
DeLong, the United States has trillions of dollars in debt and not much to show for it. How come there is no money or medical coverage for the homeless person through the Social Security Administration? I'm not sure exactly what this person means, but should I read it again?
Would it help?
But obviously they're interested in homeless
it might
people
help,
and help for them.
Why are there so many homeless people out here? If we have all this money to spend.
Yeah, when you,
Yeah.
he explained.
Okay, well, I'll take a step. First of all, I think Long Beach does a pretty good job addressing the homeless population. We can certainly do better, but we do have resource agencies within our city. We do allocate funding. We do seek local, state, and federal grants to address it. Now, candidly, that was one of the things that's been cut. The police department, we have some quality of life officers. We work with the homeless, but we do have a center on the west side. Can we do more? Absolutely. But it's given the budget constraints, it's given them balance, you know, it's do you spend money on this, do you spend money on that? And I think we do the very best that we can, lessening our community. In fact, if you look at our most recent budget process, the city manager gave a good proposal to the mayor, who then added some recommendations and brought it to the city council. Then we made some changes. If you look at all those changes, they were directly in response to community input. It's attending community meetings. It was community people that came to the council meeting, that came to the budget meeting, and advocated and said, this is what's important to us. Public safety, police, fire, libraries, parks and recreation. And the city council did the best it possibly could, working with the organizations to figure out how to rebalance the funding. Could we do more? Absolutely could. But candidly, I'd like to do more in a number of areas. Thank you.
Mr. Lowenthal.
Well, you know, this is where there's a real clear difference between the council member and myself, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. What you're hearing is the reason why, let's be clear, the reason why we don't have the resources to provide money for homeless and for other people who are most in need is because the Republican Party, first of all, well, let's step back, because they claim we have this large debt, that we cannot deal with anything else before we fix the debt, and therefore we have to cut everything. Well, remember, how did we get this large debt? One of the ways we got it was that we put under the previous administration, we put 2 wars on a credit card. We never knew how much there was, and so we grew this huge debt. Another way that we got this large debt is we allowed for the meltdown of all the financial institutions. When President Obama took office, we were in free fall. We were losing 750,000 to 800,000 jobs a month. And their solution was to keep cutting everything. That is not a reasonable solution. That solution will leave people on the streets, that will not support, and that it just benefits the wealthiest. We have to, again, have a balanced approach that provides money for social services at the same time that we also increase our tax revenues. That's what we have to do. That's what I propose. That's what President Obama has put forth. I hope that's acceptable to you.
I thank you. Incidentally, we've received several pages of questions about the problem of this problem with the Social Security system, specifically with the treatment of homeless people. Time doesn't permit for the candidates and for us to really give this any length of time. So what we will do is to give you the questions so that you can look them over in the future or whatever. Now, Mr. Lowenthal, one of the biggest controversies and frustrations for people is with Congress and the lack of bipartisanship and seeming inability to work across party lines. The most critical issues are left in limbo. What is your track record of working across party lines, and what are the strategies you'll use to ensure the successful passage of important bills through the partnership?
Well, I think that I have a track record of working across party lines. I'm known for that. I'm known in the legislature as somebody who is fair, who listens to all sides. And so when I introduced, for example, in 2001, after the redistricting took place and Long Beach lost its congressional seat, I became one of the founding members of the bipartisan caucus, in which Republicans and Democrats came together. There were 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans that came together, and my job in the caucus was to put forth an independent redistricting commission that would go across party lines to make sure that districts were fair and that we were elected people. When I first started, didn't have any support at all. After working on that for 4 years, I had a 2/3 vote. We had 27 votes out of the state senate. It was never taken up in the state assembly. But my record brought people together. In the education committee, I brought people together to work on bipartisan. In transportation, we were able to bring forth the resources to build a bridge here, to build a state courthouse with a public-private partnership to fund, because Republicans supported me. I had support among all the Republicans to do both of those projects. That is because I listened to them and worked with them also. I will continue that record, and I stand by that record.
Thank you, Mr. DeLong.
I think you have Republican support on those projects because they were economic development projects. Republicans are known for supporting those. You know, look at my background. In fact, a year or so ago, I received, I thought, one of my best compliments at the end of a council meeting. And it wasn't meant as a compliment, but I took it as one. One that got me out for this. One of my colleagues, particularly controversial, slams a binder at the end of the evening and says, I don't understand. You're the only Republican, there's 8 Democrats, a Democrat mayor, and you always get what you want. Well, first of all, none of us always get what we want, right? Not in our personal lives, not in our private lives. But what she was referring to, and I don't think she got it, but what she was referring to is my ability to work with others. So, you know, what do I need to, what do you want to call it, trade, compromise, collaborate, whatever word you want to use with Susan and Robert, you know, or this way, or Pat, or D, and, you know, what are the mayor's priorities? So how can I craft something that I think has a pretty good shot is going to be successful in the council agenda? You'll see, I never throw stuff up just because there's a political agenda and let's see who votes yes and who votes no. And then look at the budget process nationally. And Alan said, well, you love the Paul Ryan budget. Well, I do think there's good things in there. I do. I think that, you know, trying to balance the budget, I think we absolutely should get there. Now, what's wrong with the Paul Ryan budget? Well, let's look at it. The president proposed a budget, didn't get a single vote, not Democrat, not a Republican. Well, then the House Republicans made a similar mistake. They passed a budget that was partisan. There was a single Democrat that supported that budget. I think that's a problem. Is there a problem here? Okay. So that was the problem with that budget, is that it wasn't bipartisan. What would the Republicans have needed to do to compromise, to get some blue dog Democrats, to get some moderate pro-business Democrats? I mean, come on, they could have done something, and they didn't do that. In regards to reputation, I'd ask you just to judge Alan's comments here today as he talked about the Republican Party for the Democrat Party. Just tell me whether or not that sounds like a bipartisan problem solver to you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowenthal,
Yes.
would you give your 2-minute closing, please?
Again, I would be honored to have your support as I run for Congress. Today's that I'd like to announce. Today's a wonderful day for me. Not only do I have a chance to talk to you, the nonprofit, the leadership in the community and nonprofit, but later on today, I'm about to have a rally, and the past president of the United States, President Clinton is coming to California and will be in the Orange County part of the district, will be endorsing my candidacy, and will be coming to give a rally for Alan Lowenthal. I think I have a national reputation of bringing people together, fighting for social justice, fighting for jobs, fighting for air quality and water quality, fighting to improve our communities. I have a record of listening to people, of working across the aisle. I'm proud to say that I have the endorsement in a nonpartisan way of 7 other members of the Long Beach City Council. Not one other member of the City Council has endorsed my opponent in a nonpartisan race, nonpartisan City Council. So I think I am a person that has won the respect of this community, has represented you well for a number of years. I hope that you can support me as I run for Congress.
Thank you. Mr. DeLong.
Thank you. One of the reasons I don't have an endorsement from other members on the city council is I didn't ask for any. Endorsements are important in Orange County and other areas where I don't have a reputation, but I have a reputation here in Long Beach, and I'm very proud to run on my 6-year record here. So what's our vision for the future? I think we have failed leadership in Sacramento, and I think Alan's been part of that leadership. I mean, let's look at what we have. We have the highest sales tax in the nation. We have the 2nd highest gas tax. We have the 3rd highest income tax. We have the 3rd worst unemployment rate. We have the 3rd worst tax climate. We have the 3rd highest foreclosure rate. We have the 10th highest property tax rate. California is ranked by CEO Magazine as the worst state in America to do business in the last 8 years in a row. I will tell you, that is the kind of leadership that will go to Washington. We simply can't afford it. What I believe we need to do is we need to grow our way out of the mess that we're in. We need to get our economy growing again. Who benefits in a growing economy? Everyone benefits. If you're unemployed, you have an opportunity to get a job as the unemployment rate comes down. If you're underemployed, you have an opportunity to get a better job. If you're stuck in a career, but now your company is growing, expanding, opening new offices, you have the opportunity to compete for that better job. And by the way, government's going to do better too, because there'll be more tax revenue at the local, state, and federal level. That is how we grow ourselves out of the problem we have. That is how we make sure our college graduates have opportunities for their futures. That is how we get our country going again. I have a track record of economic development in the private sector. I understand how government works, being a member of the Long Beach City Council for the last 6 years. And I promise you, I will work very hard for my family and for yours. And I would appreciate your support on November 6th. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this together today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. It's not easy, and we try to get as many questions as we can. There are so many, but that's the way life is today. And I thank you so much for coming out this early in the morning. I appreciate it, and you've been a great audience. You've been just wonderful. Thank you.
Let's give them another round of applause. It was a great morning. I also want to bring your attention to a document that's outside. It comes from the California Association of Nonprofits. As I mentioned, we're really pushing this whole idea of getting involved with your government by making sure you get to the polls on November the 6th. We have buttons in the back that says vote your mission. So not only is it important for you all in this room to make sure you get to the voting booth, but make sure everybody you work with, everybody you work for gets to the voting booth as well. So thank you all for coming. You can pick up these information sheet from California Association of Nonprofits. They do take stands on the proposition, so you're wondering what the nonprofit focus is, you might want to pick this up. It's outside. Thank you all.